you see this, some of you do, this piece of silver tape here. And this analogy is very important to me. And we're to just say to yourself, okay, this is your birth. And this line represents all of your life, the whole of it. Okay? And this is death over here. Right here. Now, I call that, in my writing, your life mile, because I don't have a better term for it. Just your life mile. All right? Now, in that life mile, for some of you, it's going to be short. For others of you, it'll be 100 years or more. For some, it'll be 30. For some, it'll be 70, whatever. No one knows that. Although I guarantee you it'll be a lot longer if you think healthier and adopt some of the things I'm talking about tonight. But in the vast majority of your life, the big hunk, there are a set of rules and guidelines and things that you have to master and memorize and get a hold of that will work for you. I call that big chunk the vast majority of your life until you get right to here, right there. There's 1 inch in this space. 5,279 feet, 11 inches of your life up to here, and here, what I think of as the critical inch, because it symbolizes such a tiny proportion of your life. The big chunk of your life, the rules are like this. Most of you have already memorized them, mastered them, and lived them. They are: do what you're supposed to do, obey the rules, listen to other people, go to school, get good grades, pass your courses, don't give your teachers a hard time, get into college if you can. If you can't, go out and get yourself a job. Go out and get yourself some training. Make money. Bring home a paycheck. Get married, raise a family, have children. Do the things that you're supposed to do. Please other people as much as you possibly can. Pay your bills on time. Stay out of trouble. Don't go to jail. Dress nice. Go to parties. Have a few drinks. Do all of the things that will make your life work. I am not putting any of that down. It works. We have the greatest society in the world. I am not here to put it down. I love it. I love being a part of it. I appreciate my freedom. But over here, in the critical inch, let's call that your sense of purpose, your sense of mission as a human being in your life. In the critical inch, the rules are exactly the opposite as they are for the big chunk of your life. Exactly the opposite. You can do all of those things that I've just described, all of those rules, and memorize them and get through them and be good and please other people and all, and you will get through your life with a minimum of trouble and stay out of jail and so on. I guarantee you it is impossible to have a sense of purpose in your life by following those rules. Not possible. You cannot have a sense of purpose by pleasing other people. The rules over here say, save for the future. Think about when you retire. Think about your goals and your objectives. That's wonderful, and it helps, and if you've got kids going to college and all these things, you have to do some of that. But it won't give you a sense of purpose, a sense of meaning, a sense of mission in your life. A sense of mission comes from learning the exact opposite rules that work over here. And part of my mission is to change this inch into the big chunk and make those other rules the insignificant inch of your life. If you try to get a sense of purpose by living your life through your children, you will always be frustrated, even though you'll be a wonderful parent. By definition, you cannot feel fulfilled by someone else's accomplishments. You can only stand back and vicariously watch them. But you can't get an internal glow sense of what you're doing here on this planet. I, without exaggeration, believe nothing is more important to you as a human being than having a daily sense of purpose or mission about your life. Everybody I've ever met, when I get past all of the defenses, wants to feel significant, unique, special, important as a human being. You can't do it by living in the future. The critical inch, you live now, today. You live in this moment. In the big chunk, you live in the past or you live in the future. In the critical inch, you literally allow yourself the freedom to enjoy a moment. Or in the big chunk, you postpone that gratification, that joy. Over here in the big chunk, money, prestige, power, promotions, awards, things like that give you a sense of purpose. Over here, inner, what you feel about yourself. How you evaluate what you are as a human being gives you a sense of purpose. These other things pay your mortgages. These other things give you things to put on your wall. Those are nice. But they don't give you an inner sense of purpose. We all want to leave footprints in one way or another. And transcending the rules over here, getting out of more, better, getting out of IFD, idealizing, frustration, demoralization, getting out of panic, getting out of inertia, getting out of striving, getting out of those things is what this is about over here. And it's different. It's really different. Over here, you consult your outer signals, your external signals, all the things outside of yourself. Over here, inner signals. What do you believe? Over here, you get up in the morning and you go to that job, and you know in your heart that you no longer feel fulfilled in it. You know you've mastered it. You know how to do it. You've done it for 20 years or 30 years or 4 months or whatever. The challenge of it is no longer there. The fulfillment that you once felt in it is not there anymore. It is drill. Remember? Drill. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's drill. Drill is not fulfilling. It just keeps you automatically responding the way you've been doing for the external paycheck which you turn in, and the inner peace that you want isn't there. Well, in the critical inch, you get out of that. You leave that. I know what you think, all of the responsibilities, all of the risks, all of that, but I'm not talking about that right now. I'm talking about how you feel about yourself. We can talk about the results. Most people who take the risks do better than they ever did before in all of the traditional payoffs that they think of as important. They end up making more money even though they're not looking for it. They end up with more personal things in their lives, better relationships in their lives, more time for the things that are important, which is spending time with your children and loved ones and so on. Henry David Thoreau said about success, he said, if one advances confidently in the direction of his own dreams and endeavors to live the life which he has imagined, he will meet with a success unexpected in common hours. You know what that means? To me, that means, it makes me shiver just to say it. It means when you take the risks and advance confidently to do the things that mean something to you, not to pay your bills, not to be the good supporter or the good wife or husband or father or mother. Advancing confidently, living your life your way, that success, ironically, follows you in ways that you've never dreamt were possible before. But when you chase success, paychecks, more money, bigger vacation, blah, blah. When you do that, then you are living right and you're getting by and doing all the things you're supposed to. But in here, there is no inner peace. And when you lack, as a human being, inner peace, you lack a reason for living. You lack a sense of purpose. The ladder that I described, I got three-fifths of the way up. Right up here on the ladder is what most people call coping. Coping. For God's sake, will you learn to get along? Just get along. That's all I want from you. I just want you to just cope. For God's sake, get out there. Don't make any trouble. Don't make any waves. Just get along with the world. Right? And a lot of people think that once they learn to cope, they go to their therapist so they can learn to cope. Just, God, just let me cope. Oh, geez, those kids of mine, if you only knew. Just let me get along. Just let me cope with it. The problems I have, that guy I'm married to, if you should have to live, you know, just cope. Just let me get through that. And they think that once they do that, they're there. But they're not. If you want to talk about the ladder, way down here, we've got panic and inertia, striving. Coping is about this much further. And then way up there where those lights are is the top of the mental health ladder. It's called mastery. And which is what that counseling book he described is about, for personal mastery. I tried to put together in that counseling book, in the last 4 or 5 years I worked on it, a curriculum in schools to train young people how to be the healthiest human beings they can be. You ask yourself, what do you want for your kids? What's the answer? I want them to be happy. I don't want them to be neurotic. I don't want them to be pill poppers. I want them to be fulfilled. I want them to have a sense of purpose in their lives. And where can they go to learn? Where are the courses on how to avoid feeling guilty? And how not to think anxiously? And how to not worry about what other people think of you? How to eliminate approval seeking all the time? And how to love yourself? And how to live in the present rather than in the future or the past? And how not to allow yourself to be victimized by parents, by big people in life? How to manage your own emotions? Where are those courses? How come kids don't learn that? It's up there. And I'd like to see every school in America teaching, promoting both sides. If you ask yourself, what is the most important thing in my life? Is it what I know? Or is it how I feel? You will say to yourself, how I feel really takes precedence over what I know. I don't care how much knowledge I have. If I feel bad, if I don't like myself, if my emotions are taking charge of me, all of the knowledge in the world doesn't mean a thing to me. And why? Why aren't schools and families and churches and all of our institutions training people in the how I feel side just as much as in the what I know side, which is, of course, just as important. And even more significant is that we know that you can't get to the what I know side. That is, you can't learn to read and compute and memorize and understand the cognitive skills if you don't have the how I feel side under control. Just try studying when you don't feel well sometime. Why don't we train people to learn how to grow up to be neurosis-free instead of mass-producing neurotics? And what is it like to be at mastery all of the time, every day of your life? Well, I suggest this to you. Take a break, because, boy, you must be very tired. Come on back, and we'll spend the last half of this seminar talking about just that. Okay? Thank you.
On our planet, you can't give away what you don't have. And if you don't have love for yourself, then you can't be loving to others. You can't give something away that you don't have. So self-love is the name of the game as far as being a no-limit human being. But it has nothing to do with conceit. And a lot of people confuse that. They assume that if you love yourself, then you're conceited. Conceit is another form of approval seeking. If I have to tell you how great I am in order for me to feel good about myself, then your opinion of me is what is controlling me. And that's just approval seeking. It's like giving up control of myself in order for you to like me. But if you have what I call a quiet love affair with yourself, the self-actualizing or no-limit person, which is the person we're talking about here, if you ask the question, do you love yourself, would probably respond I never thought about it. It's not anything I give any attention to. Or, of course I do. It's what I am. I mean, why wouldn't I love what I am? Because self-love is already a given. The no-limit person is so busy being, so focused on purpose and what they're about and what they're here for, that they don't have time to notice what their neighbors are doing or what anybody else is saying about them. They don't even have time to notice it.
What I'd like to do is give a kind of overview, and this is really the first time ever in public that I have presented much of this material, of what I've been working on for the last 8 or 9 months. The image I have goes like this. Right here in front of this bank of lights are, whenever I'm talking here, or when I walk over here, I am talking about neurotic people. Whenever I'm here, I'm talking about normal people. Whenever I'm here, I'm talking about no-limit Nez people, okay? Now, I'm taking the same quality and just trying to walk across and show you specifically the differences and maybe give you a few things that you can do specifically to get out of these banks and into this one over here, all right? And the first dimension that I'd like to talk about a little bit is in the whole area of the unknown. Okay? When I'm talking about neurotic people, self-defeating people, I don't like labels like that, but what I'm talking about is people who become immobilized by their fears and by their thinking and so on. The fear of the unknown is the way that neurotic people handle the concept of the unknown. Okay? They are afraid of doing anything different, of wandering into territory that they've never been before. They want to be safe. They don't want to take risks. They whine and complain about anything that represents change. Change is something frightening to self-defeating people over here. They stay only with the familiar. They read the same kinds of editorials. They are afraid of new ideas. They're loaded with prejudices very often, not based upon anything in reality, but based on, if I don't know somebody out there or something is new, I reject it immediately because it's frightening to me. Fear of the unknown. Won't try out a new job, even though there's an opportunity there. Maybe won't make a career change at a certain time in their life because it's too frightening, because they might fail. So rather than facing the prospects of failing, what they do instead is just stay with the familiar. They do it in their relationships. They do it with their friends. They even do it in the kinds of restaurants they go to, eating in the same places, having their meat cooked the same way over and over again, and never trying a Chinese restaurant or a Greek restaurant or a Mexican restaurant or anything that might be something that's different. Not because they don't like it, but because just the unknown represents something to stay away from. Okay? Over here, on that same dimension, normal people accept the unknown. They accept it. They aren't intimidated by it. They're not immobilized by it. When change comes along, they will deal with it effectively. They won't let themselves become depressed when something changes. They'll occasionally try something new, but their circle of friends tend to be thinking and acting and behaving in the same kinds of ways that they do. They tend to associate with like-minded thinkers, like-minded activities. Maybe they all like to play tennis. Maybe you all like to play mahjong. Maybe it's you like the same kind of books and movies and so on. And there's nothing wrong with that, with enjoying people who have the same interests of you. But there's just kind of an acceptance of, my friends are people that I share things in common with. And those are the kinds of friends that I have. Okay? Nothing wrong, not putting it down, just kind of a distinguish between the neurotic over here who's really afraid. This person accepts, But the no-limit person, the Nez person, is someone who welcomes the unknown, seeks it out in his life or her life, goes after it. This is one of the qualities of what it means to be self-actualized that a lot of people don't really understand, that they don't have to have an agenda. They don't have to have a plan. They don't have to have a lot of goals and a lot of specific things that they know in advance how things are going to work out. They're almost excited by the unknown. If there's a gay bar in town, they're not going to be upset about it. They might want to go in there and check it out, see what that's like if they've never been there before. If there's female impersonators dancing, or they're not going to say, let's get up a petition and get the transvestites out of the neighborhood. They might put on a bra and walk over there, and say, what is it like to wear women's clothes? Just check it out. They're not intimidated by anyone because they don't have that quality of prejudice which breaks down to prejudge. That's what prejudice means, to prejudge. They don't prejudge anyone or anything. They have an open mind about it. This person over here, probably if they get past their 25 or 30, they would never dream of trying to learn a foreign language. It's like you get to be a certain age and you didn't get foreign language. And they say the reason I can't speak a foreign language is because I didn't get it in high school. Fortunately, younger kids today get it, so I can't have that. Forgetting they have 60 or 70 years left ahead of them to do anything that they want to. This person over here at 90 will wander into a foreign language Berlitz course and say, I just would like to learn Spanish. I've never spoken it before. Whatever. Well, there's an old story that illustrates the difference between two guys who walk into a Jewish delicatessen in New York. And the waiter hands them the menu, and on the menu it says, whatever the name of the delicatessen is, specialty of the house, tongue sandwiches. Tongue sandwiches. And the one fellow looks at the menu and says, tongue? Blech. It's disgusting. The other fellow who's willing to try anything looks at it and says, tongue? Never had tongue before. I'll have a double tongue sandwich. Give me 2 tongues on my sandwich. I want to have 2 tongues right here on my sandwich. Because he's willing to try it. It's the specialty of the house. He's willing to try that. This fellow over here goes, ugh, you're disgusting. How can you eat tongue? It makes me sick just thinking about it. I don't see how anybody who's even civilized can eat something that comes out of an animal's mouth. Ugh. So the waiter said, geez, you don't have to eat. You can have anything. He said, what do you have? He said, I'll have an egg salad sandwich, please, if you don't mind. You see the difference? Albert Einstein, who was a person who wandered into the mysterious and the unknown all the time, once said, to me, the most beautiful things in all the universe are the most mysterious. Imagine if we depended upon people over here and over here to have progress when we're talking about exploring the unknown. Imagine all people like this back in the 16th century, in the 15th century, in the age of the explorers, saying, that drops off. You're not kidding me. I'm not leaving here in any boat and going up. Imagine if there weren't some people who said, let's check it out. Let's find out. Maybe there's something out there to it. You see, progress is impossible if you always do things the way you've always done things. It's impossible. As long as you are willing to stay as you are, or to stay only with the familiar and not take risks, try new things out, then it is by definition impossible to grow, to have progress, anything else. And no-limit people are excited by the unknown. So how do you get that? Why not think about some things you've never done before and do them just because you've never done them and for no other reason? Check it out. Maybe go on a vacation without a map. Maybe just go west. That's enough. West. I mean, some of you are like, what is he, crazy? West? Just like every time you make a turn, just make it west. Just keep going that way. And wherever you end up is okay. And when you get to a hotel and they don't have any place to sleep, then go on someplace else and sleep somewhere else, or sleep out in the car, or sleep under the stars, or walk barefoot in the park, or make love on the beach, or whatever it may be. Instead of just doing it the way you've always done it and have your reservations and go back to the same place you've always gone to every year for the last 20 years, in the same room, the same bed, same place. Some people run their whole lives avoiding the unknown, being afraid of trying out anything new. And while they are right in their own minds, they don't have a sense of inner peace. You can't get it if you're not willing to try new things.
What do you think a no-limit person would do if they arrived at a party and they found out that everybody had dressed formally and they had dressed casually? He wouldn't even notice. He's not focused, or she's not focused on external appearances, not focused on what other people are wearing or how they look or how I look. They simply understand that dressing is just something that you do, and you do it based upon what you feel like wearing. Now, this is not to say that this person is going to show up at a formal affair with tennis shoes and a loincloth. In other words, that would be a person who is still trying to impress other people with their uniqueness and their differences. And the fact that you have to impress other people, it means that other people's impressions are what are controlling you. No-limit people have controls from within. Always controls from within. That's the important concept here, control from within. So that they dress based not upon what other people are going to say or think or feel or do or how other people are attired. They dress based upon what seems to make sense for them, and when they arrive someplace, they don't say, oh my God, you've got jeans on and I don't, or you wore this and I've got to go home and change so that I can be just like everybody else. They don't notice. Somebody else has to point that out to them. And that's very different than some of the stuff you'll hear some people in the profession talking about how important it is to be concerned about everything that you wear, and you got to wear the right handkerchief, and you have to wear this, and what you wear is really important. I've never concerned myself with that. It's never been an issue for me. And I've never found that it's been anything that's had much of an effect in my life. I mean, if I do show up someplace and everybody else is dressed different, nobody cares, and it doesn't make any, and I enjoy my meal just as much, or the whatever it may be, and that's just the end of it. It's the concept of not noticing that's really crucial in this whole area of living at the highest level. What we have to do to understand this business of self-love or self-acceptance is to get at this notion that purpose in life and what you're here for and what you're doing is something that finds you. It isn't something that you find. You get yourself unclogged. You get the junk out of you. You get the hatred, the anger, the fear, all of the kinds of thoughts that are put-downs of the self, self-contemptible kinds of thoughts, self-rejecting thoughts, all right? You get rid of those, and you get centered. Robert Frost said, we all sit around in a ring and suppose, while the secret sits in the center and knows. The secret that sits in the center and knows is what the centering process is about. It's what no-limit living is about. It can't be the force that operates in your life if it's clogged up with something else, all right? I think of it like a container. And if you have a container that's full of manure, there's no room in the container for love or for anything else that goes into it. And we all have manure in our lives, okay? But it's knowing what to do with the manure that's really important, all right? I mean, everybody has that in their life. But if you take the manure and put it into the ground and use it for fertilizer, you can grow beautiful flowers with it, all right? So it isn't whether you have manure in you, it's knowing what to do with it and where to put it so that you can create flowers or bread or whatever it is that you want to create. The centering process is really commensurate with self-love and self-acceptance. And the centering process is more than just a metaphysical term. It is a total acceptance of where I am and who I am and where everyone else is, and a non-judgmental, balanced approach, a physical balance and a mental balancing of everything, and an acceptance without judging. It's like seeing the world as it is, not as I would like it to be, and no negativity attached to it. That when you get to that, when you're able to think that way, then the all-consuming notion of, oh, am I valuable, am I worthwhile, that's a real low-level place for people to be. When you're questioning your value, you're questioning your worth, your whole esteem as a human being, when you question that, when you even ask the question, am I valuable or am I important, you're operating at a real low level. When you're always focused on, I've got to prove my value on the basis of getting you to like me, that's another low level, all right? Or I've got to prove my value or esteem as a human being based upon being successful, that is, achieving a whole lot of things. You see, everything in the universe comes in paradox because we are in paradox, because the planet is in paradox. I mean, think about it. The paradox that you are is that you are form and non-form at the same time. You are your body, and yet you're not your body at the very same time. You are your thoughts, which you can't get a hold of, and yet you're your body, and so you always have these two conflicting kind of things. Well, our planet is like that. I mean, our planet is like a magnet. If you think of a magnet, it's got a plus on one side and a negative on the other side. It is a whole that is a combination of opposites. All right? It's always a combination of opposites. Everything in life that has any significance comes in paradox. And it's like that magnet. I mean, how can one thing be two opposites and still be one thing? How can a human being be someone who wants love and wants to get it, chases love and never gets it? And the person who doesn't care about whether they get love and just is love has love come into their life all the time. The person who wants the most approval in life and goes after it and demands it based upon something that is lacking inside of them never gets approval. They don't get the approval. But the person who doesn't care about approval, I mean, think of the person who gets the most approval in your life. And that's somebody who doesn't even care about it. Why does someone who doesn't care about approval get approval, and someone who tries to get approval never gets approval? Because someone who wants to get approval is doing a disapproving thing. I mean, who wants to be around people who always want to be approved of? It's an irony. It's a paradox. And most people's reason for having self-doubt is that they start from a premise that I call lacking, that something is lacking. When you do the whole psychology of motivation, you find that most people are motivated based upon what Maslow called deficiency motivation. That is, they start from the premise that something is wrong, something is missing in me, and my motivation is going to be to repair the deficiency. I'm not strong enough. I'm not rich enough. I'm not happy enough. I have something lacking, all right? No-limit people aren't motivated by deficiency. They're motivated by growth, all right? Where I am is where I've chosen to be. There's nothing wrong with what I've chosen to be. I can still grow. If you look at a flower that is alive and you look at a flower that is dead, you say, what's the difference between the two? One is growing, one isn't. If you look at a human being that is alive and another one is growing and one isn't. Growth and life are the same thing. Growth motivation means I don't start from the premise that anything that I've ever been up until now is anything other than what I had chosen up until then and what I knew how to do. It's not lacking, it's not deficient, but I can go in this direction. But I'm always going from the premise that where I am at this moment is fine. That's what self-love is. Where I'm going at this moment is fine. Where I'm going at this moment is fine. And where I will get to and where I am now are equally okay, are all right. That's what self-love is. You are not going to get it all. You are it all. You are not going to arrive at happiness. Happiness is the way. You're not going to be a healthy, happy, successful person if you do all of these things that are missing in your life now. Because if you cannot appreciate everything that you have right now in your life, I mean really appreciate everything that you are and have right now, you don't need another thing. What do you need something else for? You'll just be in a new position to not appreciate something else. Your limitation is an inability to accept and love where you are right now. When you get that you have to be able to take every moment of your life and see it as complete and whole and total, then all you have to do is see that in the next step you'll be there too. And on the things that you think you really want are going to start arriving in your life. the irony, the paradox again. The less you chase them, and the more you're just focused on being centered, and the secret in the center that knows, the self-love that is there, what you have to do will be very clear. And what you need for yourself in your life will arrive in your life in amounts sufficient to take care of all your needs.
On the quality of the self, over here, the neurotic person is self-rejecting. They find a lot of things about themselves that they dislike, that they find distasteful. They look into the mirror and they put themselves down a lot. They find fault with themselves. They're too short, they're too fat, too tall, they got the wrong color hair, they don't have enough of it. There are some areas that are off limits, folks. They put themselves down a lot. They have pet names for themselves, like dingbat and dummy and fool and so on. They really, as they look into the mirror, they don't like what is reflected back. And you know what they do? They blame the mirror for what it reflects. Yeah. There is nothing in this world that is positive for you in accepting a stance of self-rejection. Ever in your life, putting yourself down or disliking yourself will never give you a positive reward. Ever. Now, I am not talking about conceit. I am talking not about being a person who tells everybody else how great you are and how terrific you are. Not at all. But looking in the mirror and disliking the self that you take with you everywhere you go is the most, or one of the most, self-defeating things that you can do. You don't have to have other people know how terrific you are. You simply have to have what I call having a love affair with yourself, a quiet love affair. You don't have to tell everybody else. Now, putting yourself down in any way will bring you to a position of not being able to grow, teaching your children to put themselves down, or modeling for them. If I were to ask the average person out there in the country, are you attractive? Now, the neurotic will say, you must be kidding. Look at this nose and look at this. How can you even ask me that? Many people do that about themselves. And they don't just say it for affection or for attention, rather. They say it because they've come to believe it about themselves. No parent ever ought to say things like that to their child, that you're not attractive or that I don't like you or that you're not worthwhile, ever. There's a big difference between not liking someone's behavior and not liking someone. If you say to a child, you're a bad boy because you stole that dollar bill, you're a bad boy because you spilt the milk, you're a bad boy for spilling nails on the carpet just when I was trying to have company come over or whatever, and you say that, the child learns. I judged myself based upon what I do, and when I behave badly, therefore I must be bad. But if you say to a child, I don't like your behavior, and I won't accept it, I won't tolerate it. We won't have that kind of behavior here. You're terrific. Love you, love you, love you. You are worthwhile just because you exist. That's enough of a reason. But this behavior, we can't tolerate. Children understand that. They know it, and even when they're punished for it, will not ever equate that they're bad people because they've behaved badly. But neurotics believe that they are worthless or not, and they put themselves down a lot to other people. The normal person in our culture is someone who accepts himself, but not wildly, doesn't have a strong sense of affection for themselves, in fact, doesn't even think in loving, affectionate ways, just kind of tolerates themselves, okay? This person over here is in love with himself or herself. No conceit. This is a person who looks in the mirror and goes, ooh, boy, that's good. I like that. I like that person. And the things about me that I don't like, I'm changing. And the things I can't change, I'm accepting. Because not accepting things you can't change is just crazy. It doesn't take a doctor to tell you that. I'll give you a classic example. A woman came to me, told this story before, it's a true story, came to me, and she was one of those people who didn't like herself. And I had told her over and over again in therapy that it's really important for you to like yourself, and it's important to think of yourself as attractive. You take that body with you every place you go. It's equivalent in logic to carrying around a bag of manure every place you go. And people say, what do you carry that bag around? Oh, I just take it everywhere I go. Yeah, sure, it smells and it's awful, but I just take it with me every place I go. You'd say, well, why don't you leave that or learn to like it if it's really attached to you? But can you imagine taking something with you every place you go and not liking it? It's incredible. This is what she was doing. On top of that, she was knockout. Gorgeous. I thought. 40 years old, 39 years old. She was married to a guy who was one of those macho types. I don't know quite how to describe it. He's the kind of guy who wore a lot of gold chains, and he was probably the macho type who would jog home from his vasectomy, okay? I mean, if that'll give you an idea of, now that's macho, right? You don't get that. Now, Diane sees me, and I'm telling her, you know what you have to do, Diane? She had just come from her gynecologist, had a gynecological exam. Her doctor had told her, Diane, you ought to be so proud of your body. You know, you've had 3 children. You have the body of a 19, 20-year-old. You have the breasts of a 20-year-old girl. You have taken such good care of your body. You kept yourself. You really ought to be very proud of yourself. And I'm telling her, now she's been to 2 doctors in the same day. One of them is a real doctor, right? And I'm telling her, you got to look in the mirror when you go. You got to take off all of your clothes and look in there and say, you know, you're really terrific. You know, look at yourself and cute little tushy back here. And, you know, you're all right. And like yourself and practice that if you're not good at that. It's a very important thing to do. So she's doing that, right? She's standing in the mirror in her bedroom. She tells me this. Looking at herself in the mirror, and her husband walks in. She says, what the hell are you doing? I said, what do you mean, what am I doing? I went to 2 doctors today, and both of them told me I have the body of a 19-year-old girl. In fact, my gynecologist told me I had the breasts of a 19-year-old girl. What do you think of that? And he looked at her, he said, did he say anything to you about your 40-year-old ass? She said, no, as a matter of fact, your name didn't come up today at all. That's the kind of thinking that you have to learn to... See, if you watch television, television will teach you to dislike all kinds of things about yourself. All kinds of things. You ought to not like the way you smell. You know, so you ought to, and the reason that you ought not to like it is so that we can sell you a lot more deodorant. And you ought, you know, you have to please other people. What you think of yourself isn't really so important, but what you think of others, now that's what counts. And it isn't even other people, it's even your animals, your dog. You know, when you come home and take your shoes off, and your dog flips over and lands on his back because your feet smell. Now you got to please your dog. You got your neighbors, your friends, and so on. Well, the messages that are out there, it seems to me, are very clear. There's an awful lot of pressure put on people, encouraging them not to feel very positive about themselves and to dislike all kinds of things. I saw ads from the time I was 19 about baldness that were incredible. You know, it's like they would show some demented-looking, creepy character who looked like he had just murdered 19 nurses with a photograph right here. Get a close-up here now. It's like right here, you know, photograph right there. You know. And the sneer kind of up like this, you know. That's before, you see. And then there's a picture of after. This is when he's had hair transplants from God knows where. They'll transplant him any place you got him. Put him right here and here. And then after, you know, or he's got a hairpiece or whatever. And that always the caption or the big headline is hair is the secret of his success. You are what is on your head. Message. What is the message? If you are losing your hair, if you have baldness, then you ought to dislike yourself, and you ought to do everything you can to mask that and disguise that. Those kinds of messages lead a lot of people, whether it's in the area of baldness or whether it's in the area of how they smell or what they look like, to begin to believe that I am only attractive if I look more like whoever's current. If you look like one of them, then you're attractive. But if you don't, then your goal in life is to see how much you can emulate those qualities we call beautiful. And you don't get to decide those. We do. Any person who doesn't think of herself or himself as attractive and beautiful and important is in that neurotic or self-defeating quality. And there's never anything positive that comes from thinking anything else. In the area of anger, it's really interesting. Neurotic people become immobilized with their anger. Okay? That is, a lot of people think, after having read Erroneous Zones and so on, that I believe that anger is something that's bad. Not at all. That thinking angry thoughts isn't healthy. Not true. What I think is unhealthy is allowing yourself to become immobilized by your anger. So that if most anger is supported by this sentence. In relationships, the sentence is, if only you were more like me, then I wouldn't have to be upset at you right now. So why don't you work at becoming more like I want you to be? In management, that's what managers are telling their employees all the time. One of the biggest mistakes that they make, that I get angry at you when you don't do things the way I think that you should do them, and then using anger as a way to try to mobilize people, and it seldom works. Instead of helping people to understand that there are a lot of ways to do things, and that thinking angry when it immobilizes you is a waste of time. So that anytime, if you run into an obstacle in your life and you find that you are upset, depressed, immobilized, can't function effectively because of something that you dislike, then you are a candidate for being in this neurotic corner. Your anger is something that you ought to be able to use constructively. And normal people are able to handle their anger so that it doesn't immobilize them. They can contain it. They can not think angry and get themselves all worked up. They still keep it bottled up inside of them very often producing ulcers and getting themselves really worked up, but they don't ever let it out. And if you ask me, is it healthier to let out what you are feeling in terms of frustration rather than keeping it in? The neurotic is better off. You're better off to take a pillow and slam it up against or scream out or whatever, as long as you don't do it against other people and abuse them. You're better off getting rid of it. But there's a much higher place that no-limit people are able to get to. And that is right here in the whole area of being mobilized by your anger. All right? What don't you like in the world? What are the things that you find really offensive? You don't like hunger? You don't like children dying out there? I hate it. I get angry at it. I really do. The fact that any human being has to die because they can't get fed when we have enough food to feed everybody and enough technology. When I think about us getting ready to go to war again and killing more people, I don't like that. I get very upset about things like that. Now, what do you do with it? Well, the neurotic flails out and gets all upset and yells at everybody else and finds fault with everybody, and that's it. This person kind of just feels it and keeps it in. This person is a doer. This person does something about that. They are mobilized by it. They get involved in something like the Hunger Project. They write letters to congressmen. They get on television and do something about it. They go over to Cambodia if they have to. They write songs about it. They try to raise consciousness about it. They try to elect officials or maybe even run for office themselves to try to change the injustices of the world. They are doers. They take their frustrations and turn them into constructive good for themselves, for humanity, whereas These people just kind of keep it in, and these people just flail around. You see the difference? We all have things about ourselves and about our lives that we don't like, and which we have anger about because of the way that we think. But the way that you deal with it just depends on where you are on that ladder that I talked about earlier. The neurotic person over here, and this is most people now, we're talking 77% of the people in our culture, according to some of the research studies, are more on this scale than anything else, are what we call externally motivated. Externally motivated. What do I mean by externally motivated? They are people who allow the externals of their life to determine where they're going and what they're doing in their lives. The externals are, let's say you're a drug user. How do you counsel a drug user? Why do we have so many of them? If you're right here and you use drugs a lot, let's say you go up to 3 out of 4 people and you say, who are down, depressed, and you say to them, why are you down? Why are you depressed? What's wrong? 3 out of 4 people that you go up to, try it as an experiment tomorrow, will say, she made me angry. She hurt my feelings. They made things go bad for me. The stock market is down. I can't seem to get along with my parents. They make me depressed. Whatever it may be, they will use someone or something outside of themselves to explain away why they are the way they are when they're down. Now, how does a person like that, who is wired together with that kind of internal circuitry, how does that kind of a person escape? How do they get high? How do they get up? How can they do that? Well, if you blame someone or something else outside of yourself, external to you, for being down, then you rely on someone or something external to yourself to get you up. And what is someone or something external to yourself to get up? What do we use to get up when we're external? We use alcohol. So 1 out of every 18 people in our culture are confirmed alcoholics in need of treatment. We use drugs in order to get ourselves high. We use approval of other people. We use money. We use trying to get ahead on the ladder of success. We use anything outside of ourselves to bring us up, you see. And so here you've got a person who goes down because of someone else, who goes up because of someone else or something else, and doesn't have any control over him or herself. That's most of you. That's most people in our culture. The normal person is a combination of internal and external. This external person over here looks for approval from other people, uses any kind of substance, uses explanations, is a blamer, will blame everybody and everything else for why they are the way they are. It's the starving children over in Cambodia, that's why I'm fat, because I have to eat their food. It's Sarah Lee who really made me fat. It's my parents, it's God, it's whatever. It's always something outside of themselves. This person here is rather a combination of the two. More to the external, but still having some inner directedness. This is a person who, when things are not going well, knows in their own heart that they're responsible for it, but doesn't seem to have a handle on what to do about it, how to get out of it. By the way, television preaches externality. It teaches it. Do you know that the NEA did a study recently in which they found that the average child in our civilization, in the United States and Canada and Western Europe, spends 1/14 the time in direct communication with their parents and 13/14 of the time in front of a television set. That's incredible when you think about it. Something like 7% versus 93% of the time that a child is in direct communication with someone is being raised by television. Television has almost become a babysitter. Children know everything that goes on television. They know every commercial. They are taught external. Buy this product. Look at all the situation comedies and so on. They're a hodgepodge of teaching people to have disregard for others, to make smart aleck remarks to others. You know, every program, I know this one smart aleck put down after the other, over and over and over again. That's what television has become. The endless top-rated shows that we have in our country are kids, adults, all putting each other down all the time. Just watch it. Smart Aleck, smart Aleck, smart Aleck remark, and very little regard for human dignity, and the commercials over and over again.
Jealousy, anger, depression, fear, negativity of any kind are things that a lot of people spend a lot of time defending, and they're hardly worth defending at all. Most anger is immobilizing. You look back on angry moments and you would rather not have been angry if you had the choice. Wars are caused by angry moments and people responding with anger. Jealousy is a very interesting emotion. Jealousy is a put down of the self. It is a reflection of self-contempt that a person has. You can't grow if you feel there's a lack in your life because you're always repairing the lack, all right? And so growth is impossible. Jealousy means to take somebody else's decision to love someone else or behave towards someone else in a way that you wish they hadn't, and to assess that decision as having something to do with you. That's what jealousy is. If someone that I love, and I'm a no-limit person, if that's how I feel about myself, and if someone that I love decides to be with someone else, spend time with someone else, make love to someone else, I would never say to myself that that means there's something wrong with me because that person made that decision. I would look upon it as, how foolish could someone be to want to go out and get hamburger when they've got steak at home? To me, I would see it as somebody else's decision to be where they are, having nothing to do with me. I might make a decision if I were in a marriage or whatever that I wouldn't want to be in a relationship with someone who would conduct themselves that way towards someone else. I might. Or on the other hand, I might decide, well, if that's okay, I can accept that as well. If you're talking about sexual jealousy or jealousy in love relationships and so on. If you believe you're valuable and somebody else doesn't believe you are, that's the same as your reputation. Your reputation is in other people's hands. It's just their opinions. I am what I choose to believe about myself. And I might make a whole lot of decisions. Now, it sounds all very clinical, and it sounds like that's an easy thing to do, but if you understand and look at your jealousy and understand what there is to learn from it, and what a great gift it is. I went through a horrible jealous experience when I was in my early 20s. And I was immobilized for 4 or 5 months over it and kept reliving it. And after I finally got over it, I made a decision about jealousy. I said, this is just a reflection of your own inability to love yourself, your own inability to love yourself. If you loved yourself enough and thought of yourself as valuable enough, you would never make somebody else's decision not to love you have anything to do with you. And I've never had a jealous moment since. I made a conscious decision not to be jealous. I wasn't raised to look at what other people have and be jealous because I didn't have it. I was never raised to look at the neighbor who got a brand new car and say, oh, that's not fair. They got a new car and I didn't. To this day, in all these years of my life, I've never had a car payment. I've never had a car payment because somehow I was raised, or I believed, that until you could pay for it, it wasn't yours. And that because somebody else has it, that's their good fortune. And I used to think how great it is that somebody else had something, even as a child, and never think that I should have it because they had it. One time I saw a beautiful car that I just thought was the most beautiful thing in the world. And it was my neighbor who had it. And I loved the color, I loved the shape of it, and I got this image in my mind of myself driving that car. And instead of being jealous that that person had that, I just started saving my money. I started putting the focus on the solution to that thing, and within a matter of months, I was able to trade in the car that I had, and I had the car, I had it everything. It was the car I think I was the most proud of ever in my life, but it had nothing to do with jealousy. Jealousy will just keep you from effectively going after what you want. All right, it's an immobilizer. It's not a mobilizer.
Over here is the no-limit person. And this is one of the crucial variables of the no-limit person. They are inner-directed. They consult their inner signals to decide what is right or wrong for themselves and to decide about their own life mission and what they're going to do. How do you become inner-directed? How do you get a hold of inner-directedness? Because that, in all the studies that have been done on self-actualizations, on highly functioning people, on emotionally mature people, is that they have that quality of being able to say to themselves, this is what has meaning for me, and I have to do it because I believe it's right, even if I fly in the face of criticism from everybody else down the line. Most of our children have that sense of inner-directedness. And then they get into schools and institutions where they're taught. You see, if you go into most schools, and you ask for the philosophy of education, the philosophy of education will say something like, we at this particular school encourage the full self-development and individual self-actualization of each child that we attempt to educate. We want to provide curricular interventions which will give the individual development and specific self-actualization goals to each child that comes through our door. And that is so much nonsense. Because in fact, when you see young people beginning to display the qualities of being no-limit people, of inner-directedness, of saying to the teachers, wait a second, why? Of saying to the principals and the administrators, how come? How come we have these kind of regulations? And maybe we could change some of these things. When you have kids saying, I'd like to study this, and this seems to make more sense to me, and challenging authority and so on, then we do just about everything we can in our schools to see that those kinds of sparks of self-actualization are squashed and doused quickly. Anybody who's a leader in any field is somebody who has trusted their inner signals rather than somebody who's played the game the right way. You can count on that, except in government. And government can give you an example of how things never ought to be run. If you want to see what doesn't work, just look at almost everything the government gets its hands on. And it's true. It's why I strongly believe in the least amount of government that we can have, and that the government ought to be out of virtually everything. I think no one ever said that better than Ayn Rand back in 20 and 30 years ago in her writing, that if you were coming through customs, as I did recently at Heathrow Airport, and look at what happens at Heathrow with 3 and 4 hour delays to stand in lines after being on a transatlantic flight, almost you can just count on it. And I always think to myself, if they just had 2 or 3 companies who competed for customs and provided the same services and had them competing for who would go through whose customs, boy, you'd get zipped through customs, and the same kind of service would be, only it would be very efficient and everything would be done very well. But when government gets in it and there's literally no concern and there's unlimited amounts of money and so on, then things get messed up. The least government and the people who will get my vote are the people who really try to dismantle that awesome bureaucracy that we have. Inner-directedness is more than just being a rebel, though. It is like every operational phase of your life. You don't get up and do the things that you do in your life because you're supposed to or because other people are telling you to. You're doing them because they make the greatest amount of sense to you. And trusting those inner signals, I call it, in some of my writing, trusting your instincts. There's a chapter in The Sky's the Limit that I call First Be a Good Animal. And that is, we all have instincts about what is right for us. We seldom follow those instincts. Too often we think about what we should do, what we must do, what we ought to do, instead of what works right for me. Remember E.E. Cummings, the famous American poet, wrote back in the 1920s from Massachusetts? He had a little poem that really described this. It just came to mind. Let me share. It's called Here is Little Effie's Head. And Effie is this woman who has died. And God is now coming down to claim the body. And God is alarmed at what he sees. And Cummings puts it this way. This is a portion of it. Here is little Effie's head. Her brains are made of gingerbread. When the judgment day comes, God will find 6 crumbs stooping by the coffin lid, waiting for something to rise, as the somethings always did. Imagine his surprise, bellowing above the general noise, "Where is Effie? She was dead." And back to God in a tiny voice, "My name is Maybe," the first crumb said. Whereupon the other 5 crumbs chuckled as if they were alive, and number 2 crumb picked up the song. "Might, I'm called, I've done no wrong," cried the 3rd crumb. "I am should. Here's our little brother could, and our big brother would. Don't punish us, for we've been good." And the last crumb, with some shame, whispered unto God, "My name is Must, and with the others, we've been Effie, who isn't alive. Cross the threshold, have no dread. Lift the sheet back in this way. Here is little Effie's head. The brains are made of gingerbread." Isn't that wonderful? E.E. Cummings. Would, thank you. Would, could, should, might, maybe, must. The things that neurotics are made of. We should have done it this way. If only we would have done it this way. We could have done it that way. And you hear it all the time. I've heard it all my life about what you should have done and what you could have done. And the fact is that you can never could have done anything other than the way you did it. It's impossible. When I went up to Minnesota and was giving a talk, and I landed there, and the driver picked me up, and I said, "It's beautiful here. Look at the leaves. Look at that. Fantastic. These colors." It was in October. He said, "It's nothing. You should have been here last week." I said, "I never should have been here last week. This week." He said, "Oh, boy, I got one of those crazy shrinks." I mean, it goes on and on and on. At the telephone, people, when you have to have your lights put on, and I called up, and it was on Friday, I said, "I'd like to have my electricity turned on." The clerk said, "You should have called on Wednesday." I said, "I beg your pardon?" "Hello, hello, hello, hello. I think I got a wrong number." He said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Is this Earth?" I said, "Earth? Of course it's Earth." I said, "Well, on Earth where I've lived all my life, you can never should have called on Wednesday, on Friday. You can't do that." She said, "I think you better talk to my supervisor." That's what clerks say, thinking, that a supervisor was going to victimize me even further. It took me 4 supervisors before I got someone who understood that I didn't want to be told what I should have done on Wednesday, because on Friday, you never could have called on Wednesday on Friday. You can't do that here. You can't go into rewind and go backwards, all right? And how many people lead their lives that way? Yeah, what do we have? 3,000 people. Do you realize that if every one of you in 1916 would have bought 5 shares, Coca-Cola stock, you would all be millionaires today? I know what you're going to say. You weren't even born yet, some of you. You could have been, You could have been, right? Don't you hear people talking like that all the time? I'll be playing doubles tennis with my partner, okay? And I do this all the time, just kind of for fun, but I'll be over here and be covering the alley, and shot will go by me, shoot, right down the alley like that. My partner says, "You should have covered the alley." I said, "I never should have covered the alley. You can't do that." He said, "Well, you cover the damn alley." That I can do. I can cover the alley. But I should have covered the alley, you see? So telling people what they should have done is not constructive. How many times have your kids come home at 5 o'clock when they were supposed to have called you at 3 o'clock, right? "You should have called at 3. Kid knows you're talking to a banana. Right now, this kid knows. This is a crazy person he's talking to, right? He knows that you never should have called at 3 o'clock. Now, if you say, tomorrow, if you don't call at 3 o'clock, the following kinds of things are perfect. Then they have a complete understanding. But berating somebody for what they should have done, or could have done, or would have done, is, of course, a waste of time.